Awesome. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of DevHeads, the podcast focused on the ins, outs, and goings on of game development, with host experience ranging from indie, double to AAA. And this episode is basically an introduction to us as the host. So to start with, I'm Jay. You might recognize me from Design Delve here on Second Wind, and I'm working on 2 indie games at the moment. One is an underwater horror game called The Bog, and the other one is redacted, so I can't talk about that just yet. So let's move on. I'm joined by 2 wonderful co-hosts, which I'll let introduce themselves. So to start with, Tina.
Hi, I'm Tina. I've been playing video games since I was 4 years old. I got my start in development at Infinity Ward, where I was a senior community manager, and then I eventually became a producer. I've worked on Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, Call of Duty Ghosts, Call of Duty World War II, probably another Call of Duty I'm missing, Modern Warfare 3 DLC. And then I was able to fulfill my biggest dream of working with the original devs of COD at Respawn, and I worked on Apex Legends from its inception all the way until Season 5. And then I got curious about single player and doing major, cool boss battles, so I joined Sony Santa Monica, and I worked with the gameplay engineering team there, and I worked on God of War Ragnarok, which is super fun. And then I jumped to a startup with former Respawn developers called Gravity Well, and I was their lead producer. And I worked on an original IP, making new stuff with a major publisher. I don't think they have announced who it is yet. And then I decided to take a little break because I got pregnant and I had my second kid. And now I'm ending that hiatus with this show. So hello, everybody.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. And we're joined by another wonderful co-host, which is Mikey. Mikey, tell us about yourself.
You flatter me, Jay. Hey, everybody. My name is Michael Tsarouhas. I'm also known online as Mikey in the dev community. I got started, I guess, in late 2013. I came from the modding community. After I got started in modding, I worked on a mod called Underhell for Half-Life 2, a bunch of other stuff, mostly doing voiceover, writing, like narrative stuff, a little bit of design. And then from there, got involved with some commercial projects like Black Mesa. I'm the voice of the HECU Marines. Also wrote some of the dialogue. And then from there, around that time, got involved with Insurgency. I did a lot of that writing, narrative design, voiceover stuff, then kind of moved into community management. Then eventually moved into voiceover direction, working on Day of Infamy, like a World War II shooter we did with that studio. And eventually moving on into a design role as a lead game designer on Insurgency Sandstorm, opened up a studio with New World Interactive, the company we were at, moved a bunch of people to Amsterdam. So I was there for a few years in Europe. Really cool, really awesome experience. Solidly like AA, that's kind of what I'm representing on the podcast is being in that sort of mid-range as far as budget and production value goes with the games that we work on. Sat between Jay over here with the indie and Tina over here with the solidly AAA. After that, moved to Canada, kept working on Sandstorm, eventually decided to move on to a new opportunity and worked in virtual reality. I was working for Meta for a couple of years and moved to Los Angeles, which is where I am now. Then, I guess I was telling Tina and Jay, it's fitting. We're doing a game developer podcast here in 2024. So one of us would be the one that got laid off, right? And that was me. Last year, I got laid off by Meta, as well as most of my team. But it was a cool opportunity because I ended up doing some consulting, and that's what I'm doing now. I do contract work in design and, all the other fields that I've been working in over the past 10 plus years. And worked more recently on projects like SCP-5K is one of the ones I could talk about. I'm, again, that sort of like in between as far as experience goes. Tina's sort of that AAA and Jay's the indie. And we've all kind of got crossover, I guess, in our departments. But I'm more on like the design, writing, a little bit of community, voiceover side, and some of the other stuff here.
Oh, Mankind Profits from the chat wants to know if this is live at all, and I'm going to say, I don't know.
Yeah, we're not sure.
You're not sure.
read into that response as much as you want. Yeah,
take that as you will.
I'm sorry, Eric. Did I give you time to play my my video? I feel like I just kind of.
I was there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was watching.
Your awesome
you were on the scooter, right? That was you.
So
yes.
Why we've been so excited to get this podcast up and running is because it's such an interesting take to be able to get us sat down, that we're part of such different departments, not just in like, we range from sound designer, level design producers. We're also from different, see, I'm going to put it this way, tiers of the community. But that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about, which is how do you define these tiers and why is that important to our discussion? So like for you, Tina, what is AAA to you?
For me personally, it is a game that your parents know about, right? Or have heard of at least. It is a big budget game.
Mm,
Probably not. You're not making an original game at that point. You're making a sequel of some sort
mm,
for AAA. At this point in our industry, the budget can range anywhere between $200 million before marketing up to $500 million with marketing, maybe more, 600 million. Like AAA games are a beast of you gotta bust out the big credit card for those.
yeah. So what I'm hearing is like budget is a huge part of defining something as
Yeah.
AAA. I'd also add to the ring team size. Like team size is a huge thing. A lot of the times in AAA, the team sizes are gargantuan in comparison to say
They
like indie
can
or even
be.
AA.
For Call of Duty, when I was on it, the team was maybe 300 people. But I think now, modern Call of Duty, you have 3 or 4, maybe even 5 different game studios working simultaneously on the same projects in the same in the same code base.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like over 900 people make a COD game. When I was on Apex, there was like 113 of us without external QA. And God of War was like 400 people.
That blows my mind. As someone who, well, one of the games I'm working on, we have I think eight people working on it, and the redacted one, we currently only have 4. So, and next episode after this, we're going to be having someone on, our very own Yahtzee Croshaw, who's worked on the game by himself. So hearing games that are worked on by like hundreds of people, it's a very different ballpark. But that comes with challenges, right? Like having so many people means that.
Yeah, it comes with the territory. When you work on a AAA game, it's safe to say that as a developer, you're probably very specialized in what you do, and you don't really branch out of that way too much. For instance, you could have an artist that just makes props, and that's their full-time job for a couple years. They're not going to be making characters or weapons or anything like that. You have different departments for those things. And I'd also say like one of the perks of working on a AAA game though is when you're done shipping the build, you drive down the street, you see a giant billboard on your way home with your game on it, and it feels good. And it kind of validating for the effort that's put in. But yeah, you're not necessarily going to make big sweeping impacts on a game that's AAA because there's just so many stakeholders and so many people touching the project.
Yeah, it's difficult to get those micro changes made. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how does that differ? Because as you were talking about, with you'd be doing one thing, right, in AAA, and you'd be doing that probably for years, in comparison to indie, where you have to permanently, even sometimes in the same day, be switching from 5 different roles, right? So I'm a lot of the projects I work on, I'm usually the level designer, I'm the sound designer, I'm doing design, I'm doing implementation, I'm doing all of these things. But with indie, that's very different. Like you said, someone could just be doing props. How does that differ with AA, Mikey? Like, what's the kind of structure there?
Well, I feel like in AA, like if I had to describe it really succinctly, it's really just indie where you have a lot more money and your team's bigger. So, and in that regard, and to what you're saying, I'm saying that because we wear a lot of hats. Like just to give you an example, working on Sandstorm, I was officially like the lead game designer, right? But I wasn't just managing designers. Not to say that's a small task. It isn't. I was doing some management. I was working with technical designers, right? Engineers, working with the UI designer / UI artist. I was doing design myself. I was meeting with other designers, like doing conceptual stuff on like the sort of leadership level. I wrote the entire game, wrote thousands of lines of dialogue. I was directing actors, interfacing with the casting agency. There's just a lot of different ownership and stuff that you touch. So by
Mm.
contrast to like what Tina's saying, we get to in the double A space have a lot of, I guess you would say, agency and autonomy when it comes to stuff. A lot of ownership is maybe the best word for it. Where for me personally, like because I wrote everything and I not only wrote all the dialogue in the game, but like I designed all the triggers. Like when do people say things, and then what do they say, and how many different variations of saying things do they have? There's a ton of ownership there. Now, obviously, like that can happen and exist in AAA, and Tina can
Yeah.
speak more to that. But then there was all that stuff, and there were other hats too. I was doing a lot of community stuff. I was talking to our publisher, trying to make sure that the trailers made sense, and doing a little bit of creative direction. There's actually a lot of creative direction, especially in regards to like the characters and the gear and the equipment and stuff. There wasn't really a lot of and this is like my experience. There wasn't really a lot of like, I'll just delegate that to somebody else. Like it kind of came to me. Uh, and that being said, like, and every developer will say this ever, and it's probably not the first time we'll say it on this podcast, but every team is different, and that's a really big factor too. But I would say as far as double A goes, and like what I generally hear from other people in that space, everybody's wearing a lot of hats. That much is constant, which is consistent with indie. As far as the
Mm.
team size goes, I mean, there's some New World people in the chat right now. They can weigh in here, but I think for the Insurgency games and Day of Infamy, which is the bulk of my like double A experience, we must have like started around like 20 to 25, and then we grew to like 50 by the end of it. I want to say
Mm.
broadly around the end, at least before like I left, because I left and I went to Meta in like 2021. I want to say March or April.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about like, so we're all from such different backgrounds within the industry, have such a range of experience, and I'm thinking, do you guys have anything that you are envious about with other people in the industry? So not other people, but say like I'm indie, right? And there are some advantages to being indie. You can
Yeah.
make these sweeping changes. Tina, do you have anything that you're envious of
I
for?
mean, there's there's a lot of things that come to mind. The one that jumped to the top of my mind, though, might be a little bit selfish. When I was working on Call of Duty, I would go to industry events like GDC or E3, or even the Game Awards, and I would meet other developers. And personal experience, 99% of the time, developers did not want to talk to you. Like, they just did not want to talk to a Call of Duty dev. They're just like, we know what you're doing. We don't care. I
Huh.
introduced myself to someone
Hey,
at
you're describing their envy, Tina.
yeah, I introduced myself to one of the guys from Journey, that game company, and I was like, "Oh my god, I am so excited to meet you!" And he was just like, "Okay," and then walked away because he just did not want to talk to me. And then I learned that working on working on I guess the pop hit of our industry is not necessarily like a say respected. That's a really strong word, but you kind of get my drift, right? Like
Yeah.
other devs don't really want to engage with you that much, which is unfortunate. So
They kinda put
yeah.
you in a
Whenever
box,
you
right?
meet an indie dev, you're like, holy hell, how'd you do that? Because yeah, you wear a lot of hats and you have a lot of talents, and that makes you extremely valuable in AAA, by the way, because they value that too. They just don't encourage it that often.
Yeah, they might bring you in and not actually leverage that because of the
Yeah,
structure, which
yeah.
is something that I'm, I guess, not envious of is that structure. I think I would get crushed by that kind of format because
Hmm.
why I love indie so much is because my skill set allows me to do so many things and I find so many things enjoyable. If I was, I don't want to use the word forced. If I was employed to do the same thing every day for multiple years, I think I would start to fall out of love with that thing.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something I try and avoid with game dev at all costs because I don't know about you guys if you've experienced this, but learning to make games kind of destroys your love of them for a little bit because you look
A
at
little
them
bit.
in differently and
Yeah.
it's
I'd say it shifts it. I
yeah,
think
it
it
shifts.
shifts
That's
it
the better
for
way to
me,
say
and
it.
it depends, right? Like there's certain games that I'm not as inclined, or certain experiences, modes that I'm not as inclined. But I definitely hear you. It does affect you. And look, there's studies about this. Doing something that you love makes you like it a little less. But I think what that really means is it just kind of changes it a bit. And the passion's still there no matter what. It's just a matter of like when you go to be recreational and play stuff, it might change what you do a little bit.
Yeah. And that's why I love indie, because I get to wear all those hats at all times. If I'm getting a little bit, I've just made my sound effects, which I really love, but I don't particularly enjoy implementation. I can implement for a bit, and then I'll go work on the level design. I'll go work on
Yeah.
this. And I think it gives you a frame to detach your brain. But you kind of get that with your role as a producer, right, Tina?
Yeah, wearing different hats. If you were watching this right now, if you get mad at me at any point in time in the future, you can play Call of Duty Ghosts and shoot me in the face because I'm one of the characters. I will say, working in AAA has its perks. I blew up explosives in the Arizona desert to capture sound effects for the game, which was insane. I don't think I'll ever get that opportunity again. You also meet cool people along the way, right? There's athletes and musicians. I met Lewis Hamilton at the studio. I think Elon Musk came by once when we were working on Infinite Warfare. So he drops a little bit of knowledge on how to get into space and what that's like. Yeah, I think yeah, it has its moments.
Yeah. So do you find that, because AAA, how I define it is AAA is very business focused first,
Mm,
and
got to make that
for
money
better
back.
or worse, right?
Yeah.
But because of that, the structure is different, which means that I think the internal relationships are different. I find all indie devs I meet are, like you were speaking to about going to events. Any dev I meet is always super eager to discuss small nuanced design things, or
Yeah.
like tell their secrets and stuff like that. Do you find that with AAA, the relationships in the studio are different, and it's more difficult to form those relationships?
It is in the sense that you could walk into a kitchen and not know anyone that's there because there's just so many people involved. I will also, I did want to mention another point that keeps escaping me, but uh, you know, observing indie developers. Oh, here's the thing that I'm envious of as a AAA developer of indie devs and AA devs. In AAA, you're not necessarily given the flexibility to take risks and do things that are different and create features that haven't been necessarily seen before. A lot of AAA dev is risk adverse because there's a lot of money involved. So, they're like, there's a lot of times where people talk about specific games for inspiration, right? And a lot of those games are indie. And I feel like when you're on the indie side, you have the freedom to make whatever the hell you want because that's your thing. And that's, I think a lot of AAA devs would agree that, that's a freedom that they don't necessarily know day to day.
Yeah. And maybe that's because, as an indie, because you don't have your budget doubled for marketing, you need to take a risk to stand out. So you have to do something unique to even
Different.
be picked up.
Yeah.
So that's why those risks are taken more. But yeah, if it was like there was a magic wand and you could wave it and be like, your designer could come through and be like, I made the most unique thing that's going to sell great. Like, let's put it in the game. If that was guaranteed, I'm sure everyone would jump at it. But because there's so much money involved, if there's a small amount of risk, and usually it's within a franchise that you could do damage to, like branding wise,
Yeah.
those things are never, that risk is never taken.
It's not likely that it'll be taken. I will also, I did want to ask, you said developing something that'll sell. Is that actually in the minds of a indie dev or a AA dev? Yeah, you're just
yeah,
like, I need to make that money.
Yeah, I'll let Mikey speak to this first.
Yeah, it's a combination, right? Double A's in the middle, after all, right?
Sure.
So I guess it would be a combination. Look, we're not immune to the risk factor. In fact, it's something that I think a lot of gamers don't really acknowledge as much, the business side of things, because it's not cool, it's unsexy, and it's unartistic even, and that's tough. But it's an unfortunate reality of making games. We fucking love tactical shooters. Like everybody worked on, I'm just using Insurgency as an example because it's like a big bulk of my AA experience. But we knew that like whatever whatever we made, like if we were going to put the money into making an awesome game, we had to make sure that there was an audience for it. And that's kind of why you grow, right? That's what growth sort of is. It certainly started out as a mod, which is just people doing it for the fun and for the passion. And
Yeah.
a group of people that said, all right, well, this is serious. Clearly people like it. We like it. Let's just try to make this bigger. So you're kind of growing the idea along with trying to establish a community. And there are unfortunate parts of that where you have to say, hold on, if we do this esoteric thing, is this going to alienate this niche of our community? But that's just like all game development. It's definitely true that like you have the passion, but you also have to be realistic with money. I wouldn't say it's ever though. I wouldn't say it's ever. I'm getting into this because I want to make money because
Mhm.
that's just it's an art, right? And like the risk to on an individual level or a company level of like making a shitload of money, it's super high. Like the odds of you getting rich from doing this job is pretty unlikely. You get into it because it's interesting and it's fun and you're passionate about it.
Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think indie is an interesting one because, like you were saying about going to events and meeting other devs, a lot of people within the indie space and also the perception from players, they view indie devs as more of artists than business men and women. And I think that's a misconception because at the end of the day, artists need to eat. So all products they're making it from a passion standpoint, which I think all devs are on any
Mhm.
level from indie, double, or AAA. But I do think indie are trying to sell a product as well. Like you can make a wonderful piece of art, but also design it in a way so that it is fun and engaging to get more sales, which will allow you to create more art. And that's the thing. A lot of people think that indie just refers to one or a couple people doing it by themselves, but that isn't necessarily the case. A lot of indie developers have, quite sizable teams of like 10, 20, 30 people, and all of those people need to get paid. And no matter what country you're living in, there's a housing crisis happening. There's like the
Yeah.
cost of living is going way up, so these people need to get paid a living wage, so your game needs to sell, and that is a part of it. You can't just be like, well, we're creating art, you can't eat this week, Tina, you're
Would you
fucked,
all would you all
Some
agree
kind of
that there's maybe I'm gonna say it, like, I think there may be more stress involved in being an indie or double A dev than there is a triple A, because on the scale of triple A, you're allowed to just turn a blind eye to a lot of major factors that gets a game shipped and out the door, right?
Mm.
Like negotiating budget, talking to a publisher, PR, marketing of it all. Um, you could just work on your map and not have to worry about any of those things and know that they're handled. But on a double and indie level, like indie especially, you're involved in all of that stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot. But I think, like I was speaking to earlier, that's one of the things that entices me to the role because it's so exciting and you're doing so many different things. But it is stressful.
Mhm.
This may be a misconception, and correct me if I'm wrong. But a lot of the times, in when you're making an indie game, you live and breathe that thing all of the time. Most of the indie devs I know don't, take weekends off. They spend it working on the game,
You live
and
and breathe it, right?
yeah, you've got to
Yeah.
live it. And I don't want to say that's just indie. That's also all game developers. Like nearly every game developer I know lives and breathes the product they're working on. Because you're gonna
Uh,
have to. You have to be obsessed.
Jordan Greer in the chat asked, "Didn't Man of Lords just make like $84 million? Why would anyone go AAA?"
well,
See,
that's like
yeah,
you go first, Tina. Yeah.
Job stability is one big factor. I mean, job stability, that's like a bad term right now because it's not really
It
stable
is.
in our
Yeah.
industry, but it's as stable as you can get as a developer jumping on a AAA game. You know that you have a safer chance of not losing your job. That,
Yeah.
it's kind of messed up to say
yeah.
right now
It
because
and
you
also
still
it's the
could.
risk factor,
Yeah.
right? So Manor did really well. Like more power to the devs. It's done really well, and that's great. But well, one of the facts is it's a great game, right? So that's why it's done well. But there are a lot of great indie games that have been made that get swept under the rug
Yeah.
because of whatever factor, right? So
Marketing budget or
marketing budget, the
networking
time you
with
release,
editorial. Yeah.
it's a roll of the dice, right? So imagine working for 3, 4, 5 years on a project, pouring every day of your life into it, into this piece of art that you're making, that you're going to sell, and for factors that are out of your control, it doesn't sell well, and instead of making 84 million, you make nothing and have to, find another source of employment, right? There is an inherent risk to indie.
Yeah, indie has
Yeah.
outliers, right, that are
The-
successful. It's not the
Yeah.
norm, though.
Manor Lords is I'm not going to use the word fluke because that might suggest that it's like not earned or something. It's not purely luck. It's just not everybody can be like that, right? If you were to ask yourself or everybody here, like how many other indie games of that team size, one person, uh, and I guess the publisher too, which of course is a part of that development as well. How many other games like that have made 84 million? We don't really have an answer for that because there's not really a lot of. So uh, yeah, it's very much just like you guys are saying. It's a special case. You have to right time, right place. There's definitely luck involved. Work damn hard and have everything be perfect to have a success like that.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and like that's something that we're seeing a lot in the industry at the moment. And the player perception is those questions of why the hell would anybody work in indie or not in indie, in AAA? Why would they work here or this? And it's because you can't just make things for nothing and then risk it all. Like people have families, right? People have mortgages to pay. People have lives to live. Jesus, don't know what that was. And you can't just do that. And yeah, there are people who've worked in the AAA industry and then formed their own companies to then release things independently, or working with publishers that are more geared towards indies and have better, rates and stuff like that. But that isn't an option for everyone. It's not just this, oh, well, we're fired, so I guess we're going indie now. Like, that's just not something that can happen immediately. So it's, different strokes for different folks. People want different things out of game dev as well. For some people, it is just a job, and they love, say for instance, 3D modeling, and they just want to churn out 3D models and clock in and clock out, and that's great. And then AAA is a little bit more geared towards you, but some people want to sweat.
If I can interject there real quick, that kind of exists in AA too. If I'm hearing you describe it right, not everybody, not every single person in AA, I think, has like the turbo passion or the let's be candid, the instability of work-life balance that you have in indie. It's super common in indie because of your passion, because you want to make it, even just as a way to get into a higher budget part of the industry. But not everybody in AAA uh, is maxed out on that. There are a lot of people in AA, I think, who they definitely care about the project, but they also kind of like what you're describing there. Like their passion might be a little more specific. Their passion might be hard surface art and not necessarily the genre or the experience of the game they're doing. And they're going to work and have a decent work-life balance because they have some security. Again, of course, nowadays, whether it's a cycle or a fundamental change to the medium, we'll see. We could speculate on that, but there's definitely people who are able to have that stability in the AA space. In the indie space, I don't know. It feels like it's something that you kind of got to do on the side. It reminds me a lot of modding back in the day. But I would say that that's a similarity that AA and AAA have.
I wanted to shift gears a little bit to some of the wackier shit that you can do in AAA that I wanted
Yeah.
to share. Like, so when you work on a AAA game, your budget's pretty wild, right? A lot of AAA games have budgets bigger than like the most popular Marvel movie that you've watched, which gives you a lot of opportunity to do some crazy stuff. Like, I remember going to a LAN party hosted by EA Dice for Battlefield's launch. Right, so I'm just playing on like an air carrier in like the harbor in Oakland or something, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is nuts. Uh, yeah, just blowing
Talk about
explosives up
envy,
in desert.
Jay.
Yeah,
Here's my envy. I want to go on a fucking air carrier and have a
driving
LAN party.
tanks.
Oh,
Testing
I
out
also like to drive a tank.
helicopters,
yeah, I'm applying
shooting
to.
weapons.
I'm defecting. I'm going to AAA. I want to be on a jet plane playing Battlefield. I
Someone's
don't
gonna
want to
make.
just sit
I
here doing
remember
10 different jobs at once.
there was like what I think is a ridiculous decision made at like it almost felt very last minute for Infinite Warfare, where they said, "Let's get Guy Ritchie to direct Jon Snow. What's his name? That actor?
Kit Harrington.
Yes, for a cinematic scene in Infinite Warfare." And I can't share how much that was, but I was like, "Are we really doing this? Like, okay, is it really worth the money? I don't know, but
And
yeah,
it
that's
is
some
crazy
crazy
to
shit."
think how budget wise we can't disclose how much that costs, but to think that that could get a couple, if not a handful of indie games made from the
Yeah,
budget that was
yeah,
used to spend
exactly.
on, like, say, one cutscene. And
Yeah.
that's not to say it's a bad thing, right? You're trying to create these blockbuster
Hmm.
experiences, right? It's a different breed.
Yeah.
But it's crazy to think how different the budgets and the balance of money really is.
Yeah, like
Here's two.
Santa Monica had their own mocap studio right next door, right, for actors, and just hop in whenever you're available, and it's just like right there. That's not cheap.
Crazy. No.
There were two big things, two big money moments of my career that I remember pretty distinctly, where I went, that's nuts. Those costs are crazy. I can't fathom that. And that was server costs and
Yeah, for
yeah, right.
multiplayer
You,
games.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
you got people all over the world playing, logging in and expecting, oh, it has to be as fast as possible. As soon as I click, I need to see death, right? So you need to pay to have that kind of immediacy to a gameplay experience. So server costs was one. The other one was content creators. Those they make a lot of money. It depends on your size, of course. It depends on your reach and all these things, your applicability to the genre. But those were two moments where I think as a developer I fully realized, like, wow, like there's a lot of money in this industry, and these were just two different ways it was expressed, really.
Yeah, and I think
Definitely.
that comes down to marketing, right? The huge problem with indie is, right, you could make a landmark game, like contender for game of the year, but it gets swept under the rug because your marketing budget is nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
And that
It's
commonly
grassroots.
happens.
Yeah.
It commonly happens, and it's really nice to see. So, for an example, we're seeing at the moment with Big Mode and Donkey and Animal Well, Donkey getting into publishing and using um their reach to be able to push these interesting indie ideas that are doing designs that we haven't seen in other games. I think that's really interesting, and something that hopefully we can do in the future here at Second Wind, because like that's something that I've seen with working in games media is you do have this kind of, I don't want to use the word power, but like you can signal boost really hard, and like you said, developers will pay for that, and they will spend a lot of money to try and get you to talk about their thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's, yeah, we're in a really unique position. So I'm on kind of both sides. I'm an indie, but also I'm a content creator who has that kind of signal boosting fire, which is interesting.
Perfect combo.
Yeah, it is a good combo. Hopefully that
I,
helps the games I'm working on. So, but we'll see.
I see
Yeah,
something in the chat, Jay.
yeah,
Is it okay if we field that question?
yeah. Go for it.
It, a snake in the garden. What's your best post-game launch celebration story? Which is always fun
Oh,
to think about.
yeah.
For all of us or for Jay?
For
Well,
all
for
of
me,
us, I
what
think.
the man who hasn't released his games yet? Yeah, I think the answer to that question would be quite short.
Tina, don't make fun of Jay, please.
Like launch parties and stuff?
Yeah, what's the best way you've celebrated? And just before we answer this, a reminder: all donations that have come in, guys, they all go directly to supporting us making this content you're currently seeing. And towards the end of the podcast, I'll go through all of the donations and we'll read out the questions and we'll get them all sorted. So if you have any questions for us that you really want us to get to, chuck it in a small donation and I'll read it out at the end. But yeah, Tina, do you have any cool post-launch party stories?
Girl. Each game had their own launch party.
Hmm,
One of them was shared with another game. I think Apex shared theirs with Star Wars, and that
okay.
was cool. Watching stormtroopers do a dance number on the dance floor for us.
For you.
Yeah, the parties are fun. But in a multiplayer live service game, you don't get to take a break. You just kind of pass out, drink a little bit maybe, and wake up and get back to work because there's some kid out there who said, I played 900 hours and I need more content. Which is, a good problem to
Get
have.
back to work.
Oh, another thing I wanted to mention, when you work on a AAA game, you don't necessarily feel like you own the creative of it anymore. It sort of becomes its own religion within its community, right? When you're working on a sequel. So that's even less flexibility to just be super creative because people may be upset. Like one example I can think of is Red Faction, right? That franchise.
Yeah.
Fucking awesome. I loved it.
Hell
When
yeah.
Red Faction Armageddon came out, it was a third person shooter? Yeah, third person shooter.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were upset. I loved it personally. But, that's an example of like the game becomes its own. There's expectations set, by the players or the community that
And-
you have to respect.
Yeah, and is that something that AAA devs and producers and stuff keep an eye on? Like they're kind of honed in on what the community is after, because your community is so much bigger
Yeah.
than something in indie. Are you
Well-
paying extra special attention to that?
I think so. I think a lot of devs tend to look at what's being said about your game, right? If it's on Reddit or YouTube or Discord or Twitch. That said, it's hard to really go through the feedback you get on a AAA game and decide if this is a storm in a teacup or if the masses feel this way.
Yeah.
And it's also, I would say it's an extremely vulnerable experience in the sense that someone or a large group of someone's may shit on something that you personally worked on, and that does not feel good either because there's just more people being vocal about it. So, it comes with the territory, but it's also great when you get a lot of good positive feedback.
Yeah. 100%.
I think your answer to the question, Tina, is nice because it really characterizes what my best or one of my best, I guess, post launch AA party or celebration stories. Because for one, I don't like once the launch happened, I don't really remember celebrating immediately. Like we were just all like, okay, are the servers up? Okay, cool. What are the bugs? Oh, it's this shit. Like we got to look into that. So it doesn't happen like immediately, but as if to like further highlight the fact that this is AA and you were AAA. We just went out for an awesome dinner. Like we didn't have fucking stormtroopers dancing for us, but we
Those stormtroopers on the
did have a
tables,
very
dude,
nice
but
day.
damn.
It was for Sandstorm's post, and some of the people in the chat might remember this. Not everybody could be there because we had a lot of people that were remote, and that sucked. But those of us who were in Amsterdam, we went to a Brazilian steakhouse, and because of the company we had and the pride that we felt, that food tasted fucking good, man. It was great, and we gave a lot of credit to people who deserved the credit, right? Like our engineer was responsible for all the infrastructure stuff and singled people out and said thank you, and that was and I'm sure you guys did similar stuff right on your projects, but that was probably one of my fondest memories. There was after we got Sandstorm out the door. I think it was, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I'm pretty sure it was like at some point post launch.
I wanted to share a really good memory I have about Apex Legends right after it launched. So, the whole team, we went into it trying to keep it as a big surprise. In the leads meeting when we were discussing the reveal of the game, we said, we're going to Beyonce this thing. Like, we're going to drop it and hope people love it. So we had no indication of if the audience would love it, if our fan base... Was there a fan base for this? I don't know. Like, we're releasing a Battle Royale game. There was Battle Royale games out there at the time that people were playing, like Fortnite and whatnot. So it's like, will people like this? I hope so. And when the game came out and it was free to play, watching the number of players grow over time was like the most rewarding experience I've ever had so far in my career. I'm not scared to admit, like I cried, like you bust your ass and you're hoping that it's good and then it is. It was the most thrilling thing. Also the CEO came to our office like 2 weeks later. That could be a whole podcast in itself. He was it was a lukewarm reception, but anyways, yeah, no, it was great to see that, people loved it, and seeing people cosplay and do all that was it was really nice.
It's
Why
crazy,
why
right?
why wouldn't we cry, Tina, right? These are intensely emotional
It's a
experiences.
wonderful
Like,
experience making a game.
Yeah,
yeah,
I can speak to it a little bit.
Yeah.
So as we've discussed, the two games I'm working on currently are not out, so I do not have these stories. But I know for one that a lot of the times it's a delayed satisfaction because of other
Mm,
stuff I've worked on. You're
yeah.
not done when it comes out, so you don't have this triumphant moment of, oh, it's done, and like, oh my god, this thing I've been working on for so long is finally out.
Yeah.
Um, but
you're
I will
triggering a memory, Jay. Keep going. I got to
yeah,
tell you.
yeah. But I'll speak to a little bit like what you were saying about Apex and seeing the numbers go up. I felt something very similar with Second Wind, right? When everything happened with Second Wind, and then
Yeah.
everything went crazy, and it was the craziest like week of
Yeah.
all of our lives. And then to see the community get behind us and like rally, and just seeing the pouring of support, and
Yeah.
I'm not just talking about monetarily, but like people in the comments, people just rallying behind us and supporting us. Going from I don't know how this is going to do to holy shit, people want this, people care.
Hmm.
There's a powerful feeling, like it's really powerful,
Yeah.
and it can bring you to tears. It's and that's the community, and that's I think one of the things for game devs is like why we do this and work in this intense, turbulent, industry is because those moments and those feelings and getting to share that stuff with the community is stupidly powerful. It's really
Yeah.
nice.
It's a high that you're always gonna chase. Yeah.
Yeah. What memory did I unlock, Mikey?
Well, I guess too on the physiological side, the brought to tears moment, even outside of like a release. I remember being alone in the office crying just on another friggin' Tuesday for some reason and being like, why am I upset? Like, uh, nothing's happening. There's a lot of stress involved with game development, and the body keeps score, right? There's a
Hmm.
toll on it, and sometimes your body just kind of you got to let loose a little bit. It's not even necessarily uh, a big moment or something
Hmm.
or a launch. It certainly is often, but that was one experience I had that reminded me of like the emotional stake that you have as a developer. Uh, I mean, it's you put a lot of effort and blood, sweat, and tears to no guarantee of good feelings or success or anything. And
Hmm.
sometimes it just kind of catches up with you. And that was one day in particular where I just
Oh,
all of a sudden it
it's
hit me.
it's intense. I have this story of a dev that I will not name. But I studied and I left pursuing the industry for a little while because of this meeting. But I've come back. I met someone, I will not name who they are or what game they worked on, but we went out for coffee. We were about to get funding for a company I was running back in the day, and they came to support us because they were one of the people who was going to invest.
Hmm.
And they told us a story, and they were like, I've worked on the game for the last 5 years on a major IP, AAA, and it bombed, and I've had two kids in that time, and I've barely seen them. And in that moment, something snapped in my brain. I was
Oh.
like, "That's terrible," and I was like, "I'm not doing that." But I guess this is one of the things that's kind of geared me more towards indie.
Indie.
Is because even though you're working like crazy and you have those risks and you do all
You
that,
control your own schedule.
you control it and
Yeah.
you can do those things, right? And it's not like, oh, if I take the day off to go spend time with, family, children, blah 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 blah, I'm not going to lose my job, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to say all AAA is like that, but in some instances, crunch is mandatory. So hearing that, I was like, no thanks. But yeah, it's a risk, right? Like it's a huge risk to be a dev. I'm saying it like our jobs are dangerous, right? Like they're not.
But
Um,
you're right. There's investment and it might
yeah,
not pay off.
Well,
It's
yeah,
yeah,
when you're making something creative in the entertainment industry, it's you're hoping to appeal to an audience. Is the audience there? Is the audience going to care? You don't necessarily absolutely know for certain until the game's out.
and
yeah.
then it can screw your career a little bit.
Yeah.
We live in a
We
branded world. What if
we
they don't
have
know the game that you worked on for 5 years? What if the game doesn't come out ever and it gets
yeah.
canceled? Exactly.
Oh, I hate when that happens. I worked 8
Sucks.
years on
Sucks real bad.
a canceled game. I'm like, oh man, your portfolio is like,
Just the phrase "trust me, bro,"
yeah.
because I can't
Trust me,
talk
I worked
about
at
it.
a
Yeah, trust
company.
me, I've been working on this thing for 5 years. It's really cool. This happened to me when everything happened
Oh,
at Second Wind. A few devs reached out to show support and congratulate us and stuff. And because of that, I've made some more friends in the industry. And this will be a kind of, there'll be two things in this podcast you'll see, guys. You'll either see all of us name dropping industry people, or you'll see us not being able to say who it is because of specific things. So this is one of the redacted examples. There's a dev I know who contacted me and was like, dude, I'm working on this thing. Can't say too much. It's very, very cool. You're going to love it. Been working on it for like 4 or 5 years. And then within 2 weeks, they came to me and was like, oh, yeah, higher ups cancelled it because of X reasons. And yeah. And I was like, that's 5 years. And it's not you release the game and the community don't like it, which would be completely justifiable, right? You didn't make a thing that didn't resonate with people. But to be like, yeah, the money men said nah, thanks on a 5-year project, maddening. Absolutely
happens a
maddening.
lot. Yeah. We had
I
a
can't even
question in
fathom
the
it.
chat. Sock asked, so they asked, can you tell us a bit about your responsibilities as a producer? I can imagine that a lot of us in the chat might not know what that entails. That said, though, with that question,
Great
I
question.
think we should probably talk a little bit more about what our day to day looked
Yeah.
like or looks like.
Yeah, go for it.
So a producer is different at every studio I've been at. The underlying responsibility, though, is you're beholden to the departments or devs that you support in terms of helping them understand what they should be working on day to day, how much they have on their plate, and when deadlines are that they need to hit. I've seen producers take notes in meetings. I've also seen producers like myself check in some data or code changes. It all kind of varies, but you're basically sort of like the greatest sidekick to the developer so that they can do what they do day to day and get stuff in the game, and you hopefully just help them keep track of like the administration of making games, right? Like if they're in meetings, they're in the right meetings, they're talking to the right stakeholders, they have the information they need to get their game their feature or task done.
And does that
Producers
entail
keep people
communication
organized.
between departments as well?
What was that?
Does that entail also communication between departments? Because a huge thing with AAA is the scale. Are you responsible for making sure that the right people are communicating at the right times to get those jobs to work smoother?
Yeah, you want to make sure that they're talking to the right folks when things arise. I would also say that, for some producers like myself, you sort of try to develop a morale boosting personality for the devs you work with, right? Because making something is a very humanly emotional process. You want to make sure the dev feels like they're doing their best and they feel their best when they're working on something. So I've talked to designers that were like, I really hate this feature and I know I have to do it because the team and at large wants it and the community wants it, but I hate this change. No, let's talk about it. Why do you feel that way? Let's vent about it. Let's actually set up a play test and I'll make sure it's all coordinated so you can see if the feedback resonates with what you were thinking. Like, oh, okay, cool. Just giving them support.
You're like a
Team
fire
counselor.
extinguisher.
Like a
You're like
counselor.
an anti-burnout fire extinguisher.
Yeah, you try to be.
You're about to burn out. You come in and you
Keep
just
them
you jet 'em.
honest. Yeah. They're like, I can do this. I can make 8 maps in a month. And I'm like, no, you can't.
But I'm
Be real.
motivated. But
I
can't
respect
move
your
that
hustle.
fast, dude.
Yeah. I respect that hustle. Yeah.
Mikey, what about you? What's some of the responsibilities of your roles?
The name with design, I kind of like to describe design as being like on a really high level. You're kind of like making the rules of the game. That can involve everything along the spectrum from like the really low level stuff of like, okay, this assault rifle needs to have a good recoil value that represents its cost. That it's pretty good, but not too good because it's in the middle, slightly more expensive tier as far as our like in-game currency or point value goes. So that's like kind of the low level of like I'll sometimes spend like hours with a gun, shooting, going to the editor, tweaking a little bit, shoot, going to the editor, tweak a little bit, back and forth, and getting ready for a play test and playing with the QA team and the entire team, writing up a survey to get feedback, right, or just taking people's opinions, integrating that, and then changing it. And that's always fun because like you in that process, you know that like okay, the update's going to go live tomorrow. If this value, I'm stuck between zero point 0.5 and zero point 0.6. One of them is going to be fun, and the other one is going to be way OP, and everybody will be fucking pissed, and we have to push a hotfix. That's kind of the way I would sometimes get to thinking about it. But that's
Yeah.
like a lot of what designers will do is just like get into the nitty gritty of like balancing things and making sure things are fun and setting rules. On the other end, there's the more conceptual, less low level, I guess, stuff of like, okay, we want to make a new game mode. All right, well, let's talk. Let's try to figure out like what would be fun. Let's prototype something. I'm going to get into the editor and I'm going to prototype a mode where we have to go here and the objectives are randomized, yada yada. And let me pull an engineer and an artist together to help me in my little tiger team or strike team. They have like different terms for them, I've heard, to get some art for me and write me some code that's going to allow me to do this thing and prototype this thing, and then we're going to all play it as a team and figure out if it's fun. All that shit is like owned by a designer. The designer is supposed to determine, okay, is this fun? What's the idea? What's the vision for the mode or the balance of the weapon? The designers own all of those things.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
a
like
lot
a
of the feel.
designer has to shoulder the heaviest weight of all the criticism that a game gets or a feature gets, right? You have to be okay with people giving you feedback in the best and worst kinds of ways and diluting that
Oh
into
yeah.
something actionable, right? Like I've seen some of the greatest designers I've worked with were in a play test, and someone would come up to them and say, "I hate this character," and then it's up to the designer to take it upon themselves to figure out what do they mean by that. What do they actually hate? What is something I can take away from this to reflect on, and actually
Yeah.
get the feedback that the designer needs to work on it.
And that's a
Yeah,
skill.
that's something I've always tried very hard to do is to be the approachable person, to be the person who says, "Okay, tell me more, describe for me." Even if somebody's being a total asshole about their feedback, whether it's a person on your team or somebody in the community, they might be right. So you have to divorce your ego from all that, so to speak, and make sure you hear what they're saying, and then
Yeah.
also like not listen too hard to like the lobby that wants like the specific thing that they're advocating for and
Lobbyists.
trying to bend your own. Yeah, fucking design lobbyists, because it happens like in communities, especially like the
Yeah.
loudest ones aren't necessarily the broader community, but also you can never ignore your community. So the
Mm.
devil's really in the details, and you really have to find a good balance when it comes to all that stuff.
Uh,
It's pretty difficult.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is directly a skill that needs to be learned. So, I used to teach game design at university, and the amount of designers that I have met that are very, very incredible and promising at their role cannot take criticism in any way, shape, or form. They take a small suggestion on how to change something as a slight against their being, and that they are shit, and you want them to die. And
Can I
this
ask
is
you this,
from
Jay?
a teacher suggesting, "Hey, have you thought about this?" Now, times that by someone who does not have the skill set to communicate exactly what they're suggesting. That, like Tina was saying, "Oh, I don't like the way this looks." It's like, what do you
What about
mean?
it don't you
Yeah,
like?
what do you mean by that? And they just go, "It's shit," and then they walk off. Like, that's
What do you do with that?
infuriating. But like you said,
Yeah.
it's a
Very
skill to
helpful.
develop to translate that stuff, right? But you
Yeah.
need to be able to take that criticism, because if you can't, you're never going to get anywhere. You're going to get trapped in your own head, and your designs are going to be worse because of it.
Let me ask you this, Jay. How old are your students usually? At least the ones that you kind of get that experience with.
So it's usually year one. So we're talking 19, 20, and this is just a maturing thing as being a human. Like, it's a struggle back then when I was studying game design, and my fellow students would critique some of the things I'd designed and stuff like that. Part of me would get offended and be like, "Oh, well, God, I guess I'm just so bad. And like, I wouldn't take it out on them or retaliate, but I'd internalize it and be like, oh God, like, but then I learned like, it is a blessing for someone to say to you, I can see a problem with this. And here it is. And you can look at it and you can study it and be like, okay, yeah, that actually is a problem. I couldn't see this, and the fact they've brought it to me is a blessing in disguise, and I should take this and run with it and thank them. But that is something that is learned for a lot of people. Not everyone, but most people, they have to learn that skill.
I think a lot of us are assuming in these examples too that the feedback that we're receiving in these discussions that we're having right now is good feedback. There's a lot of times where there's like extremely terrible feedback, and that's another art form in dealing with how to sort of like push that away or put a stop to a line of thinking. In my experience, there's been a lot of times where people that don't look like the main a character that we're critiquing had the loudest feedback. Like, they need more personality.
Are
Does
you
that
More
mean?
thigh gap.
are you
More-
making
more-
body curves, Tina?
Yes, yes, I am.
Personality is directly.
I don't like
How do you
that.
deal with
Not
that?
hot enough.
Yeah. So,
I need a bigger ass on this character to
Yeah.
feel like I understand their struggle.
I'm not attracted to her. I'm like, oh,
Oh, so the game's
Okay.
bad. I understand.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the point. Why? Oh,
Oh my
God.
god. Yeah.
Yeah. So to segue off of that, to speak about
dance.
what my kind of roles entails for indie. So for an example, we were talking about hats. So the last big bout of work I did on one of the games I'm working on, I spent the day white boxing level design, grey boxing level designs, implementing and 3D modeling, texturing, making sound effects, implementing sound effects, play testing. It was basically mostly everything apart from programming, because I suck at programming. As someone who has
not
quite severe
easy.
dyslexia,
Yeah.
because I have dyslexia, turns out if you spell something wrong in your code, it doesn't work. I spell most words wrong, so it's not my jam.
Aw.
Things look broken where they should be working, but it's me. So I do a lot of everything else. But that's the joy, right? I love my job. What I get to do at Second Wind is incredible. And I wouldn't, exchange it for anything ever. But when I'm working on game dev stuff and I'll wake up in the morning and I'll start 3D modeling and then, okay, we need to go do some sounds, make some sound effects, implement them both. That always switching is so satisfying to me. I always feel like I'm always improving. I'm never stagnating. And it's super, super nice. Like, I really, really, really love indie space. It's so fun.
One thing I just thought about, a big difference between the three of us, feedback and the people available to give you feedback varies greatly between each experience we've had. For indie and AA, like, okay, Jay, like, where do you get your feedback on your game?
So usually other designers, like friends in the
So, like,
industry,
close friends
who I trust their opinions and aren't afraid to just tell me that's garbage and this is why, and like I can trust them. It's like hyper focused like QA testing with people I know can articulate responses quickly, because as indie and as someone who's working a full-time job as well as working on 2 games, I have very limited time. So I need that information to be fast and reliable. So I usually get it from those people. But
you're also taking
yeah.
a risk too, right? You don't want them to leak whatever you showed them or talked to them about.
Yeah, it's so this is why they're trusted. They're trusted people that I know in the industry. That I know. The thing is, for a lot of these people, a lot of we sign NDAs and we do stuff and we stuff like that. But developers talk, right? And they do it in roundabout ways that don't break NDAs, but they do talk to each other. And because we want to share what we're working on with fellow designers and stuff like that, but not to the point where, like you said, they can steal what you're doing, or do stuff like that. So the people I talk to are people I trust, that aren't going to do those things, and also they've shared things with me, so I if they turned around and stole the project, I could just do the same thing to them. So we trust each other. It's all about
Mutual
trust.
leverage. Oh,
Yeah, it's mutual
how
leverage,
nice.
but mainly it's trust. It's
Mm.
I've known these people for years and years and years. I trust their opinion. I trust their confidentiality. But that would then expand into community, right? Once we start revealing this other game I'm working on, we'll do public playtests, and a lot of that will be done through Second Wind, and internally at Second Wind, through the community and stuff like that. Because we have a lot of people that are interested in seeing those things, and that's what I've seen with Mikey. Like when you're releasing things for live service games, a lot of that feedback is immediate, right? Because you're releasing it and it has to try and be as clean as possible straight away.
Oh yeah, people will tell you whether they like or don't like something very quickly. You know, uh, I in this podcast and have said that with a laugh of like, oh yeah. Honestly though, like let's be real. Like at the end of the
Mhm.
day, as much as many emotional factors as there are to that possibility now, that the tech is good enough, we can get immediate feedback for video games. It's
Mm.
also pretty nice because as rude or as awful as people can be, or as like misinformed or as inaccurate as their feedback could be, it's pretty awesome to be able to hear people say, "Hey, this isn't working. This is no good." I was talking about the balancing the guns example. We can hear pretty quickly if people think, "Hey, this gun is like way OP," or "Hey, this gun like isn't worth spit." And it's the new gun. It's supposed to be exciting and fun, and I'm not having fun. And when you hear that, and if it's just a difference of like, getting in the editor and pushing something, and then obviously it's got to be tested and stuff, and there's probably other little fixes and stuff. Uh, that's all, a little high stress, and it's disappointing. Like for me, that means I didn't do my job right, because the gun wasn't fun, or it was overpowered or whatever. But at the same time, it's pretty awesome that we can get that feedback and act on it immediately, as opposed to what we used to have to do, where we had to download patches off of 56K modems and drive out to the damn store and pick
Uh,
up CDs and shit, right? Yeah. So
and burn them. Yeah.
or burn them. And it's nice now that we have that. It's nice now that we do have that immediacy, as far as like it's easy, broadly speaking, to update games, and that's a boon. That's great for the work that we do.
Mike, I
Mm.
would love to deep dive into like shooter development specifically with you one day. Like
Hell yeah, I'm
it
all
is a
about that. Yeah.
crazy, crazy thing.
Yeah, let's see if
We
we can
got
get
a
on.
Yeah, we got a question in the chat. Reaper's Grim asks Jay, is IP theft, or I assume he means like feature ideas too, that common in the industry?
So I can't really speak to it firsthand, for the sense that I've never had an idea stolen from me personally. But those things do. NDAs exist for a reason. Because
Mhm.
there, it's not super common, but there is always a team that is slightly faster than yours that could churn out your game of the year winning idea faster than you can, and probably has a bigger budget to work with, or marketing, right? So
Mhm.
it's best to keep things on the down low. It just keeps things very safe, and this is why I say devs talk, because within trusted circles they will talk about small things, and not breaking the NDA, but talk about it in roundabout ways, because you need to get that feedback and that bounce back off of other devs. But you need to be careful, because not everyone's nice in the industry. Some people are just looking to fuck you over and take the hard work you've done and not credit you,
Mhm.
and take all the money. And that stuff's a lot more common in, I think, AAA than it is in indie, because in indie
It
people want to
happens at
see
double A
other
too.
indies succeed, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah,
You guys seem more like a tight knit, watch out for each other community. I mean, you have to be,
from my
right?
experience, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, AAA. Shooters specifically too. If there's a feature that fans are going crazy over, I can mention the ping system in Apex Legends.
Hmm.
It was born out of the desire to help players communicate without actually using voice chat,
Yeah.
because that can be a little toxic. Um, And so, it gives you the ability to say, like, "Here, there's a weapon here I want to call your attention to. Here's an enemy in the environment that you should look at. Here's like cover that we could take, or here's the direction I'm going in." And do it very quickly. I recall, I want to say, there was like some Fortnite devs that try to emulate that same thing and the battle chatter that comes with it. And I don't think they realized how much work and preemptive effort and scheduling was required to make that feature good.
Mm.
So
Dude,
you see, a lot of shooters will
yeah.
like copy each other's features, and sometimes they may or may not pull them off because they don't realize how deep the like rabbit hole goes with them.
When I first saw that shit, my thought was, "Oh man, that's a lot of voiceover," because you got to point out everything.
Yeah.
Like if your character points at and like you could fall back to some generic lines over there. Hey, all kinds of things, and you
But
have
when
a
you
HUD
introduce a
indicator,
new
but it's
weapon,
context
a new
sensitive.
character.
Good.
Oh my god. Hello.
Hi,
So
everybody.
we should be back. There was a slight technical hiccup there. It wouldn't be a second win stream without a technical hiccup. It was going very smoothly, so it was going to wait until we're over an hour in. But we're back. I literally
Good, right?
cannot remember what we were talking about.
An
Oh no,
hour with
what
no
were people
issues.
hearing on loop? Introducing a new character.
Yeah. Talking about the ping system. What were we saying about that? Oh,
I
just
made
like
a
when
comment.
games copy each other or try to like get inspiration from each other on features, sometimes they don't know how far down the rabbit hole like it how much work actually went into it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you see that with genres, like not just in the AAA space, but in the indie space, a lot of games will become incredibly popular. And then other games will try and emulate that, but not know why it's
It was
succeeded in
popular.
what it's doing. And they
Yeah.
will look at it on a face value. Even to games that you've worked on that have emulated things successfully, but the battle royale genre is something that was emulated a lot, and
Yeah.
for the most part, a lot of games got it wrong.
Mhm.
And obviously, Apex Legends took its time to look at it and understand why it's working, and then build atop that, which is something very rare to see in
Yeah.
AAA, right? Like you said, innovation is difficult to get done in that space.
Yeah, it was important that the team played battle royales when they went home at night, right? To understand the community and the expectations and what was good and not good. But the other factor at the time before Apex came out, we were lucky in the same way that you are, Jay, in trusting someone to come in and give you feedback.
Yeah.
We brought in influencers. I think we brought in what's his name? We brought in one influencer, and his name escapes me right now, and I feel really bad about it. But we asked him, what he thought of the game, and he said, "You know what? I'm tired of playing a battle royale game that's in beta." Because I think at the time, a lot of the battle royales that were live were kind of
Not
buggy.
finished. Yeah.
So I think that sort of kicked us in gear and said, okay, we're not going to release anything like that. It's going to be polished. And that we delayed our release by a couple months.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more. But...
And you succeeded at that, right? Which I'm sure contributed to,
Mhm.
I think back then it was one of the first battle royales that came out, like you said, that was polished and was ready, and it
Hmm.
wasn't like here's a afterthought mode because PUBG's doing well. It was, this is a game,
Yeah.
it's free, go play.
Yeah.
And I think that's what set you guys apart 100%.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. So I think it's probably time for us to get into some of our donations, go through some questions. Because Tina, you're on a little bit of a deadline because you've got an interview. So we'll go through some of these. We may have seen some of these. Eric, if you see any, you've sent me a list. If there's any more, if you don't mind grabbing those for me so I don't have to trawl through, I appreciate you endlessly, Eric. You're the best. So first of all, Snake in the Garden gives €2. Thank you so much. He says, welcome to Second Win, Tina and Mikey.
Thank
And
you, man.
then we
Thank
got
you.
the Reaper's Grim. Name's been cut off, so I don't know if that's your full name. Gives 10 Canadian. Thanks so much. Says, welcome to Second Win, and thank you for bringing your knowledge and experience to the community.
Excited to do it. Thank you.
One thing that we did talk about before this show went live was that, you know, a lot of discussions around games that aren't released yet are formed around speculation. And I think that for us specifically, the three of us can
Yeah.
make a better informed piece of speculative discussions. And I think that's what's unique about us.
Yeah, it's going to be cool to get into this space and then get to the point where we're like, something happens in the industry. So we've been building up to releasing this podcast for months, right? And there's been things that are happening in the industry, and I'm like, God damn, I really wish DevHeads was up and running because I would love to discuss this with you guys.
Yeah.
And now that it's up, we can do that. We can just be like, we have an episode planned. Oh, big industry thing happened. Let's jump on that. Let's get our perspectives to the people on this and have fun time discussing it and stuff. Yeah, all right. So, Mankind's Prophet, 10 quid. Thank you so much. It says, because you are not bots or a recording and create games as a passion. Yeah, I think this is referring towards, AAA and what it takes to be a developer and stuff like that. We're not robots. We're creating games is a passion, and it is an artistic industry, and it takes that. And a lot of people, because of the description of AAA being more of a space that is more of a factory floor, in the terms of how it operates. You were speaking to something before the stream started about, certain people you've spoken to who don't understand that deadlines are different for different departments and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
If someone says the game needs to be done by this date, when you work in AAA, it's not always assumed and expected that producers, for instance, know that that date isn't the same across the entire studio, right? So, like, if you support environment art and you're like, oh, we have until this deadline to get everything in environment art done, that's actually not the case. You gotta provide time for sound effects, VFX, code to get in there to make sure it's performant. So it's not like I like to work backwards and figure out when things need to get done. But yeah, like a lot of situational issues or maybe like small fires can kind of get brushed under the rug or like ignored or forgotten about in AAA. Like a lot of things just kind of bubble at the bottom and people don't always catch it because there's just so much going on.
Yeah, and I think because of that, so much is going on, and it's a little bit more formulaic and less crazy as it is with like indie and moving up towards AA. People view AAA less of an art form, which I think is untrue. Like, just because it's produced in a different way does not mean that the devs who are working behind it aren't unbelievably passionate. Like, one of the worst things I ever read online is when people post and they don't like something that's come out and they say, oh, these devs didn't care. There is no reality where that is true. Like, unless they're being dragged by, their publisher or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. To put it simply, I've never met a game developer that was lazy. I've never met a game developer who didn't like video games. I think we all try. I acknowledge there might be some exceptions to that, but if there are, to those two things at least, but if there
you might
are,
run into them in AAA.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe we can't afford them in AA and indie.
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect thing. You can't afford them in double or indie
Yeah.
because shit won't get done. Like if
Hmm.
you're not super passionate and gung ho about the thing you're working on, the product will not come out.
Yeah.
But like you said, in AAA, some people are doing it as a 9 to 5. That doesn't mean they don't care, but it's less. God, I'm working every day on this thing because I'm just so in love with it, and I
Yeah,
can't wait to get it in people's
there's
hands.
also a potential too for like with a big budget you can just throw the problem at other people or
Yeah,
more people to solve if a few people are you know, not picking up their slack
yeah,
or
for sure.
overscheduled or, exhausted.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we've got quite a few of these to get through, so I'll get a move on.
Hit it,
So
Jay.
John Brooks, 20 quid. Thank you so much. John says, just wanting to say, been looking forward to this pod since it was announced. Hell yeah. Hell
Thank you,
yeah,
John.
John. And we had one from Snake in the Garden. What was the best post-launch celebration story? Yep, we've done that. Moving on, we got a member for 5 months, Chris S. Thank you so much. Kevin Schmidt is just joined tip jar. Thank you. Sinu with the $2. It says dono to upgrade Eric's internet.
Yeah. Shout out
Fantastic.
to Eric. We appreciate you.
Big shout out to Eric. What a legend. Snake in the Garden says gives €2 and says it's not a real second wind stream without technical issues. Exactly. Wing Potato 199 says an appropriate welcome to the second wind experience. Yep, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yella, 2 quid. More for the new community goals for Eric's net. And right, so these are some big ones that have come in. So we've got Hekato Bree Bunny, which gives $10, and been wondering what would define an unconventional route into game development, not through code, art, or marketing, production, etc. Be from each of your viewpoints, or are those all the boxes that can be applied? Yeah. So can you get into the industry in different ways that don't include
Yeah,
code and art and stuff?
absolutely. Does he want examples? It sounds like he does.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
Okay, so I know someone who loves martial arts. Said, I want to be a game developer. I want to get involved in games somehow. My suggestion to them was do mocap. So that you put on a suit for animators, do those crazy actions, get it recorded, they get thrown in the game, now you're a part of the game. I have a buddy that was a religious studies major, decided to mod in his free time, and now is a designer. I would say a lot of game developers are unconventional. Like there was no schools for game development when I was growing up. I am very old, by the way.
No, you're not.
By game dev standards, I think what do they say? Like 6 years or 8 years is like a peak. Yeah. But yeah, like you can become a game developer just by sheer willpower and persistence and just
A little
keep
bit of
applying.
luck.
Yeah, and
Passion.
the first job you get doesn't have to be your dream job. It's a stepping stone to your dream job.
100%.
Just get your foot in the door.
Yeah, you're finding ways to get in, and being passionate is the key, right? From what we've spoken about, from indie, double to AAA, one of the keys is being passionate and caring about what you're working on. Like Tina said, you don't have to be working on the exact thing you want to get into. A lot of people who want to get into character art will be getting jobs, doing prop design or, working on some implementation and different jobs, but they're getting a foot in the door to move forward. So then you have your avenues to show people your passion, right? You might be working on something completely different, but you can be like, hey, boss or producer, here's something I've been working on my free time. What do you think? You're going to get invaluable feedback, and you're going to show these guys that you're passionate and you have the drive to do that stuff. So yeah, just put yourself forward, and you'll eventually get there. Just don't give up.
Yeah, I would. I'll second all of that. Really, I've worked with people and met people who were veterans who then joined the modding community to make levels, and then became level designers who were modders just doing animations, who now work on friggin' Call of Duty. Right? To find the thing that you like, develop the passion, do it. I guess keep your expectations realistic, I guess is the first thing I would say. Kind of like Tina's saying, like your first thing might not be the awesome thing where you want to be, but that's okay. Like be okay with getting experience. 100% get involved with modding and learn Unreal or Unity or Godot or what have you,
Yeah.
and do it for the passion and just see where it takes you, see what you like, build a portfolio. And I know all that's easier said than done, but the tools have never been easier and the resources have never been more plentiful as far
I
as
have
YouTube
a
tutorials and shit.
just another story. I have a good friend named Tom who got his start in writing daytime soap operas. Right. And when we hired him for Apex, he was absolutely perfect because it was all about the drama between characters and driving their personalities and stuff. And now he's a game dev writer full time, and I absolutely love that. So it's like just do what you like, and then there's probably something in game dev that requires that skill.
Yeah, 100%. And also, when you create stuff, just be aware that the stuff you work on initially is going to be hot garbage, and that's okay. When we start in a career, anyone, doesn't matter what you're doing, you are going
It's
to
grunt
suck.
work. It's not
Yeah.
going to be fun.
Yeah, and learning is difficult, but you need to fall in love with the learning process and improving and seeing those small incremental increases in your
Yeah.
skill and being proud of that and showing it off, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the thing I've made doesn't look like what it looks like in AAA. They're never going to hire me. That's not true. These people all started when you're starting. They understand, and they'll love seeing that passion. They'll love seeing that increase in skill. Like, just keep at it. Don't give up. It's all good.
Let me
Right.
give one more,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then we can move to the next one,
Yeah,
Jay.
yeah, for sure.
I know I won't say his name just in case. I'd love to have him on, and I hope we will. He was a competitive FPS gamer, and then he was French police. He was in a tactical unit, like a door kicker, and then he owns his own
What?
company now and makes video games. Yeah, it
Wow.
can be really unconventional the way you get involved in gaming.
Yeah. Cool.
That's mental. Yeah, so literally do anything.
Do anything,
just
and you'll become a
just
game developer.
exist.
Lay flat on the floor and close your eyes, and when you open your eyes, you'll be a game developer.
You close your eyes, you open them, you'll be at Infinity Ward making
Wow.
fences.
That's how Kojima was born, I hear. You just woke up one day.
Yeah. He just apparated. He's like, I'm gonna make a bunch of auteur-ass video games. Yeah. So what I'm
He
doing.
sat on the toilet and he just went, "Do you know what? Metal Gear sounds pretty cool. I'll do that.
I like the way that sounds.
That sounds
Yeah.
good.
I'm
It
gonna
rolls off the
pursue
tongue."
it.
Yeah, that's it. And then he laid on the floor for a bit. Right, okay. The donations are pouring in, so I'm gonna get through these because I know we're on a little bit of a time stretch. Stay the Garden says, Tina, that wall pic behind your shoulder, is that a toilet?
This?
Yeah.
No, it's
Toilet.
one of those things that you spin to see like an animation from a drawing. It was at Disneyland. I'm holding my little daughter right there.
Oh, that's lovely.
I need to hang stuff up. Like this is my
the
media
opposite
room.
of a toilet.
See
It's
these
a loving
drones?
picture.
These drones are cool. They're made by hand. I got my Marvel vs. Capcom 2 gameplay soundtrack vinyl right here. Shout out to that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I need to hang stuff up.
All right. New sub goal. Eric Internet and hangers for Tina, so Tina can hang.
Wall hooks.
The high quality stuff too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the good stuff. Metal.
Sticky tape.
Yeah. So Wizard of the Void, $10. Thank you. Doing my part for upgrading Eric's internet. Really love seeing developers speak. Hell yeah. CSI Freak, £9.99 says my son studied creative writing and has so many story ideas which I think could be turned into playable games. Who would he approach in the industry to see if it's plausible to create these? So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Who would you approach? Like, if you have an idea, who are you going to? Who are you talking to?
So I think the craziest thing about social media is it gives you a doorway into the video game industry in a way that other platforms haven't been able to do, right? Like, so you can hop on Twitter, for instance, and reach out directly to a writer of any video game that's there and say, hey, I would love your advice, and a lot of us are willing to, share feedback or even mentor when we can. Take that opportunity. It's all about networking and trying to not be afraid to ask questions and be curious. You really shouldn't. Like the worst thing you could do is be scared of reaching out to a developer, because then you'll never know if they respond or not. And I love to believe that as developers, we want more in our community, so we're happy to just chit chat or even provide our take on things.
Ask for
To
feedback.
that,
Yeah.
to that, whoever just messaged that, DM me on Twitter. I have some resources I can share with you that have been shared with me by somebody who's a more experienced writer than myself. Happy to share them with you. The dev_Mikey on Twitter is the best way to reach me. My DMs are open. So, in the DM, say rutabaga. That'll be the code word, so I'll know it's you. Okay, rutabaga.
Rutabaga.
And then I'll know it's you, and I'll give you the
What
We're
if
gonna
they
get like 10
misspell it?
rutabaga messages.
that's part of the challenge here. We'll see if the passion's there if they spell rutabaga right.
I do
So-
hope that this podcast can be that first door you open when you're curious about game dev in general.
Hell yeah.
Mhm.
Things are
Amen.
bleak at the moment in the industry, but it's not all bad. And if we can be a spark to help you towards potential career path, to
Mhm.
explore your passions, that's where we want to be at. The next donation is from Nick. It says, Mikey, tell the VO closet story, but we have so many other donations that I think I'm gonna veto Nick's donation.
Oh
And
no!
I'm gonna say we're gonna save that for another one, and we'll see how many times we can get a donation from Nick saying tell the VO closet story.
Just milk that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm following your lead.
Okay,
Continue.
cool. Because we've got so many others, and I know we're on a bit of a time frame. Sorry, Nick. Not sorry. Jordan Greer gives $2 and says, tell me about bird poo. So here's another one, Mikey.
All right. Okay.
All
All right.
What?
You have the picture too.
He's got the
I didn't
picture.
approve
How
that.
does he have the
Shit.
picture?
That's a picture of. All right. Well, I have to tell this one.
Yeah.
It's we were in Amsterdam. Nick. That's how Nick and I met. And when we met, like, geez, it would have been like 2018. He did a documentary on Insurgency Sandstorm, right, and on New World Interactive. And he came to Amsterdam and he filmed an interview. And I forget when exactly it happened. Nick probably remembers better than me. But there was a moment we were all hanging out, walking around outside in pretty Amsterdam, and I got the wettest, widest thwack of bird shit right on the top of my head, and that's the picture that you're looking at right there. I'm grateful it didn't get on like my face or my jacket or like anything nice, and it was just my hair. But I had to go home and I had to shower that shit out, dude. It was a real
Literally.
bad bird shit. Now, because this bird shit happened, and because I met Nick through this experience, and then connected with him in the fall after he left The Escapist, and pitched him on this show. That brings us here and closes the gap. And so the bird shit is a part of all this experience, really.
So if you
really
didn't get
brought us
shit
together.
on, literally, you wouldn't be
Yeah.
here right now.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Because Nick and I talked about, I think Nick had the idea for this show already, but I came to him and he's like, yeah, we could do something like that. And then I, as you guys know, made the pitch deck, and yeah, the shit is just a part of that whole story, really.
Yeah, 100%. It was this big wombo combo. Like, I've wanted to do dev podcast for Yonks. Nick's wanted to get it set up. You wanted to do it. Tina wanted, like, it's literally just, it's all come together. I'm super excited about where this is all gonna go.
And
So
you
we
haven't even seen our personalities really shine through yet, or our humor.
Not yet. And
No.
I promise you this is going to get unhinged as fuck.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Thank you, Nick, for not asking my permission before you showed the internet and the world a picture of bird shit on my face. I really appreciate that. I'm going to remember that.
So, still got quite a few to go through. So, Chris Leahy says, I can imagine in AAA being passionate about your specific work, but deciding not to care about the overall project to maintain sanity. Is that common to do that?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, when you're working on a AAA game, it's not always likely that you are in love with the direction the game goes in, because there's just so many stakeholders, right? And sometimes, like, I was in a situation where I remember Todd Alderman, one of I think he was the game director at the time on Apex Legends, had his idea for the character select screen for Apex. And it's sort of like a fighting game character select screen where you're just like everyone at once trying to pick their character. And I remember telling him, like, on the sofa, I'm like, dude, it took me like 10 years to work with you, and this is like the worst idea I think you've had.
just as a shooter player, like I don't want to fight for who I want to be.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And then he just smiled and looked at me and was like, people are going to fucking love it. And he was right. You know, so, and in the moment I was like, I don't really like working on all this, but it's like, it is so good. I think it's
Yeah.
so good.
Hell yeah. Right. So, from Raziel with 100, I think, Polish currency that I don't know the name of. Apologies. A warm welcome to the new heads. I hope you all have a great time here. Oh, more
I'm
donations.
trying to help
Oh my
Nick out
God.
here. I'm trying to clean out his ears.
So, okay, so here's a question. What kind of topics from Anthony Lynch with $20? Thank you so much. Says, what kind of topics do you have planned for future podcasts besides the Yahtzee interview? Are there plans to bring in other devs? Yeah, there's plans to bring in lots of devs. We've had, oh God, there he is. We've had lots of devs reach out already, which is super, super cool. Before we've even done our first episode, we've had some big names in the industry reach out, which is really cool. But yeah, we're hoping to bring on lots of different devs from lots of different backgrounds to talk about lots of different things. We haven't got anyone specifically locked down yet, but you'll always see me, Mikey, and Tina discussing, the ins, outs, and goings on of game dev. And occasionally we'll get devs big from AAA, but also from all the way down to solo devs at Indie with Yahtzee, discussing more of the same, just like what's it like to do our jobs, what are the hang-ups, what are the pros, cons, and what's happening in the industry. So yeah, you can look forward to a lot of stuff. We got another Raziel, a member for 5 months, says, oh, by the way, happy birthday to Second Wind, 6 months.
Oh,
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been 6 months. We're doing a big fundraiser towards the end of the month to keep us going in the right direction. So if you want to hop on for that and support us, that's great. And the same for Patreon. If you love our content and you're watching right now and you want to see more of this and you want to help support us making this type of content, why not check out the Patreon? It goes directly to funding all of us, making all of our shows, all of our podcasts, all of our streams. So yeah, if you love us, support us if you got it. Right. A couple more, then we should be good. Rambler Monkey, in future, we'll start doing this sooner. I didn't know you guys were so generous. Goddamn. Rambler Monkey gives $20 and says, was late to my eye appointment, so I got booted off the list. So have some dosh instead. Happy to see Mikey and Tina again. We'll listen back later.
thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about the appointment. Shit, that sucks.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but they can support us, so that's great. So swings and roundabouts. Hekato Brie Bunny again, thank you so much, says getting messed on equals game dev thanks team. Also, revolution against captain of these nuts. Yeah, I mean one day we will overthrow our overlord Nick. I mean we shouldn't actually. He does too much. But hey, we have to put up with the D's nut strokes. Mikey the Maniac gives $10, thank you, and says, any tips for someone who is looking to switch jobs to a game studio next year? How to network while not ready to immediately start work? Artist currently in comic book studio, looking to go into game dev. That's a good question.
A lot of artists that I've worked with post their portfolios on ArtStation, and I think their contact information is available there as well. I would just start hitting up people, as many as you want, getting a feel for what they do, ask them for feedback on your portfolio, see what kind of things those studios want out of you, and then hopefully you can add that stuff to your repertoire. Art is a very unique thing where the art style may vary between games, so being able to show how flexible you are in your skill could be good. But again, like you don't really know what kind of art style they're looking for unless you ask. So I would hit up art directors of game studios. You can Google the credits of your favorite games, and I would start there.
Yeah, I'll second that, and I'll also add, as far as like specific networking strategies, a lot of cold calling on LinkedIn, cold calling on Twitter, cold calling in general is pretty helpful. Having a portfolio is nice. Being succinct, like brief, like in your email outreach, asking for people's advice and such, and sharing that. It's cool that you already have the art background, so like that's further ahead than a lot of other people might be. And now it just comes to the kind of sucky persistence that you will need to get your foot in the door somehow. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, artists from games show up at like Comic-Con and GDC and big events like that. So if you can, if you have the fortunate opportunity to make it out to something like that, I would do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got a wedge in the network if you're working at you said a comic book studio. So I think you're more in than you might realize. Just
Yeah.
push a little bit deeper in.
Transitioning might be a little bit easier, right? It
Yeah.
might be easier to transition because you've developed a skill set, and then developers might be looking for that, and you just need to slightly adjust in a certain direction, and it might be good. That's a good thing in chat. I'll do this before I read out the final ones.
Oh, I would also say, there's nothing stopping you from drawing a character from a beloved franchise that you may like and posting it on social media with like hashtags of that game or to the developers of that game just to garner more attention to your skill set.
Yeah, that's true. Also, hi Ludo.
It's Ludo. Say hello. High five.
Do you count skyrockets?
If you can 3D model, that's probably great too.
Oh yeah, 3D modeling is extremely transferable.
It's like you said, the wide skill set is really nice, especially being an artist. So learning some of those things is good too, and throwing it in the portfolio.
100%. And I think our final donation, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, Snake in the Garden with the €2. It says, "Don't worry, Mikey. We know it's Nick who likes poo-poo."
I'm not worried at all. It's all good. There's at least one worse image on the internet I know of me, which I won't describe, but I'm sure I'll see it again someday.
Hopefully not on the podcast. We'll see.
Oh no, it's nothing that it'd be appropriate to show, but it'd be embarrassing.
You just don't want to. Okay, fair.
Yeah, but it's funny. There's a story.
Okay, time to get down, leader. Down you go.
I think for anyone asking questions about how to break into the industry, I'd love updates on how it's going too.
Show us that journey, and it doesn't have to be through donations. Once this podcast gets going and stuff, specifically me as the dyslexic man, it'll get easier for me to start reading stuff as it's going by, and we'll get more comfortable with that. So we'll pick up on these things in the chat. At the moment, we've just kind of read a few donations because it's easier to spot because they get highlighted. But we'll be getting to that stuff. We want to see your journey. Like you said, message us on Twitter to tell us what you're up to. Tweet us. And I think that might be a good.
From George Lucas, real quick. He asked if me or Mike have pets, and I just wanted to show my dog Olive.
Oh, cutie.
This is Olive.
Very cute. Great name.
I'll have her down here sometime.
I used to be a dog person. I don't have a pet now, but I grew up as a dog person. I had dogs my whole life.
Love dogs. They're the best. Oh, speaking of dogs, we've just had member for 3 months from Andrew Shug, which says Ludo appreciation shout out. Yeah, she's had quite a busy day, so she's been asleep this entire stream. But for future streams for our watchers and not listeners, you'll be able to see Ludo exploring because she is real, as a lot of people don't assume. So yeah, I think that kind of brings us perfectly to a closing time because Tia needs to leave shortly. So I just want to remind people that this entire podcast, all right, Ludo, chill out, is funded by you guys. So if you enjoy this type of stuff, come support us on Patreon. It keeps this stuff going. It means we can do more of these cool podcast events. Maybe one day we can do an event where I travel over to these guys because you guys live relatively close. And we can do one in person, and that would be really cool. So if you love this content, come support us. A quick update on Design Delve. This episode of DevHeads is coming out now. There was meant to be a Design Delve next week, but now there isn't. So what we're going to do is we're going to delay it. So every Friday, alternating from Design Delve to DevHeads, you're always going to have a piece of dev content every Friday. So it means you're going to get, and you're going to have to wait a week extra to get Design Delve, but it means you're going to get something every Friday. So that's going to be really, really cool.
So the next time we're back is on the 24th.
Yes, and we're back on the 24th with our next episode because it's every 2 weeks for DevHeads. And we're going to have our first guest, which is going to be our very own Yahtzee Croshaw, talking about and celebrating the release of his game, which he solo developed, but also celebrating his birthday. It's simultaneously his birthday and also the release of his game. So we're going to be talking about what it's like to develop as a solo dev, the trials and tribulations of that, and have a good time. But yeah, is there anything you would like to say, Mikey?
I'm super excited about this. This is an awesome opportunity. Thank you everybody for your questions. I saw some personal notes of appreciation, some friends in the chat. I just want to say thanks, guys. Honestly, I really appreciate it on a personal level, and I'm excited. I already have done some outreach to some guests. I think we could have some really interesting conversations on here. This is I think so these voices, I think they should be in the space. Thank you for listening to us as developers, and appreciate that you're hearing.
Hell yeah. Tina?
I think we're a little bit buttoned up this episode because it's our first, but you'll see that we're a little bit ridiculous at times, and I look forward to sharing that with you all, especially because I feel like my humor is pretty wild. I also wanted to say that, I started my game journalist experience with 1UP and podcasting, and I missed it dearly for a very long time. In game development, I didn't always have the opportunity to speak as freely as I wanted to, but on this I can. So I look forward to just shooting the shit and being candid with you all.
Hell yeah.
Talking shit, shooting the shit. That's what I expect from Tina.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing, Jay?
In your case, right?
yeah, fucking it.
So it's all shit.
Thing, Jay? Sorry.
And I talk shit. So we're
all
we're
shit
all
fuckers,
we're all coming from the shit angle. Dev heads.
We're all scatological here.
Yeah.
Let me say thanks to Eric too. Like Eric, we see you.
Eric,
everybody,
awesome.
Please say we see you, Eric, in the chat because he deserves that recognition. Thank you, Eric, for getting this all the support that you've been doing for this show and getting it together.
We love you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
So,
Thank you, Eric.
From my perspective, just the last thing, a design delve released today with me sitting down with Riot Mortdog, the lead designer of Teamfight Tactics, made by Riot Games, talking about why it's so difficult to balance multiplayer games. It's actually one of my favorite videos that I've ever released. So if you haven't checked that out, go check that out on Second Wind right now. But yeah, other than that, that has been us, the Dev Heads, and we will see you in 2 weeks in the next one. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.